r/askreddit. What is a true fact so baffling, it should be false? The record for most children born to one mother is 69, to the wife of Fyodor Vasilyev, b. 1707 c. 1782, a peasant from Shua, Russia. In 27 labors, she gave birth to 16 pairs of twins, 7 sets of triplets and 4 sets of quadruplets. Edit. Wife name is Valentina Vasilyev. Not sure what's more impressive, having that many children, or considering it's the 1700s, living through it. My husband read this for the first time yesterday. His reaction was, dude, get off of her already. To the wife of Fyodor Vasilyev, we can't even name her in her own world record. Nice. If sound could travel through space, the roar of the sun would be deafening even though it's 93 miles away. That shit makes sound? The longest time between two twins being born is 87 days. I see these threads a bunch, but this answer has me interested. Gonna look up the source on that one. From 1613 and 1620, a samurai traveled to Rome by way of Mexico. During this time, Shakespeare was still alive, Virginia had been founded for around a decade, Galileo was accused of heresy, and Pocahontas arrived in England. He met the Pope. He was made a Roman citizen. His name was Asekura Tsunenage, and was the last Japanese person to officially visit Europe until around 1860. Is there a diagram or map or something of how that trip was made? Another fun samurai fact, Oda Nobunaga had a black man as an official samurai. This was in 1581. Where exactly the man was from, Mozambique is most historians guess, and what his name was weren't recorded, but the Japanese gave him the nickname Yasuke. He'd come over to Japan on a Portuguese missionary boat. By all accounts, he and Nobunaga got along great, and he fought in several major battles of Japan's warring states period. Sadly, after Nobunaga's death, Akechi Mitsuhide declared Yasuke to be not a man but an animal and had him sent to a nearby Christian church that had been established by missionaries. There is no record of what happened to him after that. You can boil water in a paper cup over an open flame. My dad showed me this when I was 4. Blew my mind. I thought witchcraft was outlawed. Cheetahs can't roar, but they can meow like house cats. Whoa, is this legit? Googling now. Edit. This has been the cutest part of my day. There are more planes destroyed in World War II than there are, currently intact, planes on Earth today. I mean, everyone was making a shit ton of planes. There is an extremely rare condition called Stone Man syndrome. It causes any smallest damage done to tissue to regrow into a bone. Speaking briefly, people affected by this sickness slowly turn into living statues as they get older. Wikipedia. Surgical removal of the extra bone growths has been shown to cause the body to repair the affected area with even more bone. I'll never sleep again. I saw a documentary on that once. One advanced sufferer had to explain to a young girl with the syndrome that at some point she was going to have to make a choice, be frozen forever standing up or be frozen forever sitting down, and the pros and cons of both. Utterly chilling. My neighbor has this condition. She is one of about 800 people to have it. I have watched over the years as she has gotten minor injuries, reduced from walking with a cane to being unable to move out of a special kind of wheelchair. It's a really sad disease, but she remains one of the most positive people I have ever met. Edit. 800. As of 2017, approximately 800 cases of FOP have been confirmed worldwide, making FOP one of the rarest diseases known. I worked with a kid who had that. He was wheelchair bound, unable to play with his primary school friends, and his jaw was starting to lock up, so feeding was about to become impossible. Absolutely heartbreaking. Whale reproduction involves 3 whales, 2 to do the nasty and 1 to keep them from sinking. Talk about third wheeling. Third whaling. Stalin, Hitler, and Freud all lived in Vienna at the same time. Imagine a sitcom with them all as roommates. If you earned $1 every second, it would take 2,921 years to have more money than Bill Gates. It's okay, I think I'll survive earning $3,600 an hour. Edit. Thank you, kind stranger, for the silver. We live many times closer to the last dinosaur than the first and last dinosaur did to each other. And Cleopatra lived closer to the first man on the moon than to the time the pyramids were built. To scale, the distance between a nucleus and orbiting electron is 16 times longer than the distance between the sun and Pluto. There's a universe inside us. A 500-pound, cigarette-smoking, beer-drinking brown bear named Wojtek was enlisted in and served in the Polish army during World War II. Private Wojtek helped the Polish win the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino, and was even promoted to corporal. Following the war, he retired in Scotland. Amazing share. I will name my firstborn son Wojtek. When a woman with breast implants is cremated, the implants will melt into goo. It drips to the bottom of the furnace, and needs to be cleaned up once cooled. Kim Kardashian gonna just straight up melt into a puddle. Edit. Holy shit, thanks for the silvers and golds, WTF. This almost sounds like a medieval method of testing for witchcraft. More people died making the V2 rockets during World War II than were killed by them. Another fun fact about V2 rockets. Germany was facing a large issue with rocket fuel shortages during the project because people kept drinking it. The fuel was made from 70% ethyl alcohol and 30% water, distilled from potatoes. It was the most economically viable fuel at the time, since they were already very low on other fuels. To stop workers from drinking it, they denatured the alcohol, essentially poisoning it, but people kept drinking it anyways and getting extremely ill. This simply caused people to start leaving the V2 program, suggesting that they were only in it for the free alcohol. This also means that any alcohol over 70% ABV is stronger than actual World War II rocket fuel. Was this because of deplorable conditions in slave labor camps or because of manufacturing accidents? Oxford University predates the Aztec Empire by over 200 years. And, for fun, one of my favorites. Woolly mammoths were still around at the time the Great Pyramids in Giza were built. Harvard didn't teach classes in calculus when it was founded because it wasn't discovered yet. Giraffes eat bones. When Mt Everest was first measured, it was exactly 29,000 feet. It was reported as 29,002 because exactly 29,000 was not believable. Whoever decided that was the first man to put 2 feet on Everest. I'm picturing someone standing at the bottom with a tape measure and someone running all the way up with the other end. There is no universally accepted definition of vegetable. It's a cultural and culinary term, and varies from place to place. If my son hates it, it's a vegetable. Problem solved. If every single person on the entire planet took part in a rock paper scissors contest, where everyone paired up and played, losers were knocked out and winners stayed on etc. You would only have to win 33 times in a row to beat all 7.53 billion people on the planet. Nintendo was founded in 1889. Before video games, Nintendo ran 6 hotels in Japan. The life of Frano Seluk, the luckiest and lucky man in the world. January 1962, Frano is riding on a train through a freezing canyon when it fell into an icy river. All 17 other passengers died while he escapes with a broken arm and hypothermia. 1963, on his first plane trip he was sucked out of the plane's door and landed in a haystack, unscathed. 19 other people were killed in the crash. 1966, he was riding in a bus when it skidded off the road into yet another icy river. 4 passengers drowned while he only received some minor cuts and bruises. 1970, his car's engine burst into flames while he was driving, but he managed to escape before it exploded. 1973, in yet another driving incident, his car's engine was doused with hot oil from a broken fuel pump. This caused flames to shoot through the air vents, singing off all of his hair. He was otherwise unharmed. 1995, he was hit by a bus but only sustained minor injuries. 1996, to escape a head-on collision with a United Nations truck on a mountain curve, he swerved into a guardrail that broke on impact. To save himself, he jumped out of his car's open door and grabbed onto a tree branch as he watched his car plummet off the cliff. Suffice to say, the guy had a complicated relationship with the Grim Reaper. Edit. Got his name wrong. He also won the lottery, I think. An eyewitness to Lincoln's assassination at Ford's Theater told his story on national television. Link. It's pretty well known by now, but calculators today have more computing power than Apollo 11. We got to the moon with slide rulers and huge balls. If a hydrogen atom was the size of a huge ball, how large would an electron be? If you're launching from Earth, the most difficult place to reach in the solar system is the sun. The reason for this is that to fly directly into the sun you need to first launch from Earth, and then remove all of your orbital velocity around the sun. Anything less will just put you into a different orbit around the sun rather than directly into it. The amount of power required for that to do it directly is basically impossible currently. As an alternative, you could, for relatively little power, fly all the way out to Pluto distance, slow down much less, and then fall back into the sun. The trade-off being the travel time is now about 90 years. There are other in-between paths that could get you there for different balances of energy and time, but all of them are tougher than getting basically anywhere else in the solar system with an equivalent balance. There's a mission currently traveling to study the sun, the Parker Solar Probe. It won't be flying directly in, but plans to make the closest passes than any probe ever has. It's going to make 7 passes by Venus to shed speed so it can get closer and closer to the sun. The full flight time is planned as just less than 7 years. As of this post, they are 1 week shy of a year in. If Earth was a basketball, to scale the moon would be a tennis ball. It would orbit around 7.5 meters away, which is a lot farther than most people think. If the nucleus of a hydrogen atom was a tennis ball, to scale the electron would orbit at about 2,500 meters away. There is no ball small enough to compare to how small electrons would still be at this scale. If the nucleus of a hydrogen atom were the size of a proton, the electron would be the size of an electron. Horses can't vomit. Rats are also unable to vomit. I now have a mental image of a bulimic horse in tears. President John Tyler, born in 1790, has 2 living grandsons. A similar one I like is that there is a living person who is the daughter of a US Civil War veteran, at least as of 2017. There is no good metric for the number of languages on Earth. This is mostly because linguists cannot agree on what constitutes a new language and what constitutes a dialect of an existing language. The best current metric of how many languages exist is the number of translations of the Christian Bible. Fun little anecdote about the Bible translations into obscure languages. A missionary from our church works for a mission that translates the Bible into languages heretofore untranslated and adapts the books and chapters into an audiobook app. He was in a taxi in Kenya and asked the driver what his language was. The driver told him in English that he spoke Swahili. The missionary pressed him and asked if he spoke a local tribal language. The driver said he did and referenced an obscure language he was sure the missionary wouldn't know. The missionary pulled up that language on the app and started playing the audiobook from some passage in the Bible, whereupon the astonished driver proclaimed, "That's my home tribe's language, and that's my cousin's voice." Just a funny little story that your comment reminded me of. That Bible metric is really pretty clever. It's always going to underestimate by a bit, but it'll give you a good idea. There are more trees on the Earth than stars in the Milky Way. Every time you shuffle a deck of cards, you've probably made an entirely unique order, as compared to every other shuffle in history. I love the cards one. When I tell it to people, I usually go with there are more unique possibilities for card order than there are atoms in the solar system. A lot more than when they call BS. I tell them to Google estimated atoms in the solar system, 10 circumflex 57. And compare it to 52 factorial on their calculator, 8 circumflex 67. Edit. Yeah, I used a when I meant to use E. Please, I just need about 10-15 more people to write the same comment and I think I'll finally learn my lesson. The Tyrannosaurus Rex lived closer in time to us than it did the Stegosaurus. Yeah. 'Cause it was afraid of those spikes. Cornflakes were made with the intent to keep people from masturbating. I tried masturbating with cornflakes and it hurt, so I stopped. And the dude who made them, yes, the Mr. Kellogg himself, is the reason that a majority of American men are circumcised even if they are not Jewish or Islamic. His goal with the circumcisions was the same: prevent masturbations. Edit. For those of you who don't know, he used his serial clout to convince people that he's a reputable authority figure on what is or is not sinful. He thought anything that was self-indulgent or too enjoyable was sinful, to the point of deliberately making bland cereal. I'm sure you can imagine his thoughts on masturbation if he went to such lengths with fucking cereal. So in the early 1900s he told parents that they should circumcise their kids so that they won't masturbate and go to hell. He even tried to promote female genital mutilation, burning off of the clit with acid. And for generations after, parents are still doing it to their kids because of thinking my daddy was circumcised. I'm circumcised. Why should my kid be any different? You're unconsensually mutilating your child's genitals because a cereal maker didn't want your grandparents to masturbate. Think independently, please. Don't just do it because everyone else is. You can fit every planet between the Earth and Moon, including all the gas giants. But if you lined up all of Jeff Bezos's money from end to end, it wouldn't fit between the Earth and Moon. It could go to the Moon and back 34 times. Jeff Bezos has enough money to make a ladder to the Moon. And to make it out of money. In dollar bills or pennies? GPS satellites have to compensate for time dilation, because time runs at a different rate in orbit. If you shrink down our sun to the size of a white blood cell, the Milky Way galaxy would be equal to the size of the continental United States. Space is huge. Sense of smell is molecular, meaning that molecules of what you are smelling are actually inside of your body as a result of smelling them. Think about that the next time you enter a public restroom. Like farts. Little bits of ass in your head. Even if 99% of Earth's population thought you were unattractive, 76 million people would still find you attractive. Too bad those 76 million people never see me. So you're telling me there's a chance? You see your nose all the time, but your brain just ignoring it. Well, not anymore, thanks. You are closer to being a millionaire than Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. Well, between Jeff Bezos and I, we have an average net worth of 60 billion. The color orange is named after the fruit. Before, the color orange was called red. This is why people with orange hair are called redheads. Millennials who have a bachelor's degree make 20% less than baby boomers did at the same age with just a HS diploma. We live closer to the lifetime of Cleopatra than she did to the building of the Great Pyramids. This is closer to false every time I hear it. In the last 3,000 years, there were only 268 years in which there was no war in the world. A million seconds ago was week before last, the 24th of July. A billion seconds ago was 1988. Only 4 people have been to the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the ocean. One of those people is James Cameron, the director of Titanic. Didn't he make the movie Titanic as an excuse to visit the actual wreck? The speed of light is always the same, regardless of the relevant speed of the observer. Say you're standing still, and a car passes you at 60 miles per hour. It passes you at 60 miles per hour, right? Say you're driving at 30 miles per hour and a car passes you at 60 miles per hour. Because you're already moving at 30, the car only moves away from you at 30 miles per hour. Light doesn't work this way. If you're standing still and turn on a flashlight, the beam of light moves away from you at light speed. But if you're moving at half the speed of light and turn on a flashlight, the beam still moves away from you at light speed, even though it's only moving at the standard speed of light. So even people who aren't moving half the speed of light see it moving at the same speed as you do, which isn't possible, but is somehow true. It makes no sense and makes me think there is a lot to physics we still have to learn, and I bet we find out a lot of the things we know are wrong. A child can be born that has 2 biological fathers and 1 biological mother, inherits DNA information from 2 different men and 1 woman. It's called iteropaternal superfecundation, for those who are interested. Edit. I'm actually talking about a form of chimerism resulting from heteropaternal superfecundation, where 2 eggs fertilized by different men merge and result in a single child. Ireland was a net exporter of food during the Great Potato Famine. That's what caused the famine. The Brits exported all the food and the Irish were left with only 1 small kind of potato for themselves, which then was afflicted with disease. In Florida it is illegal to tie an elephant to a parking meter without first paying the meter as if the elephant were a car. Where in Florida do you find live elephants? Please don't say Disney World and Dumbo. A black widow spider's web is 12 times the tensile strength of steel. In 1000 BC, a war was cancelled due to rain. Edit, Waru first silver. Thank you stranger. I'll one-up you. Around the 500s BC, the Medes, modern-day Iran, fought the Lydians, modern-day Turkey, in a war. During the war, there was a motherfucking solar eclipse and everything went black. Both sides freaked out and came to a peace agreement. Both sides stopped fighting each other during the eclipse as they thought it was the gods telling them something. This has been known as the Battle of the Eclipse for centuries, but no one really believed there was an eclipse. Then, scientists recently were able to backtrack and find out when every single solar eclipse happened, and lo and behold it happened right around the date of the battle. So now it is viewed as a historical fact. Edit, extra fun fact, according to Herodotus's history, a Greek mathematician successfully and accurately predicted the eclipse on the day of the battle. This means that in 583 BC ancient scholars could successfully predict the sun's rotation to a T. 1200 years later people still thought the world was flat somehow lol. Sucks the Roman Empire had to fall. There are far more tigers in private collections in Texas than there are in the rest of the world, wild or otherwise. Sharks evolved before trees did. The youngest mother to give birth became pregnant at 4 years old. I just read a post on our technical truth. We've all kicked a pregnant woman before. The phrase plastic surgery has nothing to do with the material. Plastic surgery as a field predates the development of plastics by 70 years. The two terms simply share a Greek word root meaning sculpted or reshaped. Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 and the first dinosaur fossil was discovered in 1819. This means that he went his early childhood without going through his dinosaur phase. Polar bears are left-handed. All of them. Edit, whoops, turns out this isn't true. I'm a fraud and a hack. 1 billion seconds is about 31 years. In chess there are over 9 million variations after just 3 moves each. 288 billion different possible positions after 4 moves each. In a complete game there are more possible positions than there are electrons in the observable universe. Taser is actually an acronym for Thomas A. Swift's electric rifle. TASER. 17-inch pizza is bigger than 2 12-inch pizzas. Your head ages faster than your feet. A morbidly obese person can survive with absolute starvation without any sickness or feeling ill, under close control. There have been studies since 60s. There is a patient in 1973 who went under a 382-day starvation diet for therapeutic purposes under close control with only vitamin and mineral supplements and water intake without protein, carbohydrate or fat intake, no food at all. Drop her from 207 kilograms to 88 kilograms and maintained it. After a follow-up checkup 5 years later, the patient was 96 kilograms, stabilized. Prolonged fasting had no ill effects. If anybody is curious about the article, the PubMed ID is PMC 2,495,396. Keep in mind for anyone tempted to imitate, multiple others attempted this after him and wound up dead. Do not try this at home. A toner cartridge is more expensive by weight than a B-2 stealth bomber which costs $2 billion. If you could fold a piece of printer paper in half 103 times it would be the width of the observable universe. Everything in the universe is either a potato or not a potato. Sharks have been around longer than trees. Whales used to have legs. Most early human inventions like stone tools, fire, and clothing weren't invented by humans at all. They were taught to humans by our hominid ancestors. Penguins have knees. If you took every civilian-owned firearm in the US and laid them side by side, you would have a giant belt of guns long enough to go completely around the moon. After going completely around the moon, you would still have enough guns left over to equip every soldier in the world with 2 guns. Light behaves differently when observed or not. Millions of trees are planted each year because squirrels forget where they hide their nuts. One of the tracks in Doom 2016 features an actual chainsaw used as an instrument.